Yeah, 11 years back. I still have that, that screenshot of that email. That was our first investment offer.
Wow. Who did you end up raising then?
We did from Bloom and Mumbai.
Very good stuff.
Payal, what's the status? Are we good to roll? Are we
Yeah,
waiting?
I was just about to ask if we are good to go. Shall we start?
Sure.
Sure.
Is
Very
my
good
mic working
afternoon.
okay? Is my mic working okay?
Yes, it's working fine.
Okay, thank you.
A very good afternoon to all the dignitaries, guests, and participants. I extend my warm welcome to all present here for the Day 5 of 3rd edition of India Gaming Show and Conference 2021, being organized by CII in association with Indian Digital Gaming Society and supported by the Department of Science and Technology, Department of Electronics and IT, and Department of Information and Broadcasting, Government of India. The theme of the 3rd edition of India Gaming Show and Conference 2021 is Gaming for Good, Build in India, Build for the World. The conference, along with the show, is being hosted on the CII Hive digital platform, a dedicated multi-feature virtual online platform with a 24/7 help desk and a digital B2B lounge. So before we begin today's program, I would like to take this opportunity to thank our partners, Google, Western Digital, Jet Synthesis Private Limited, Scientific Games, Hangama Games, Nodwin Gaming, Asus, Critical X Exports, Game.tv, and our content partner KPMG for extending their support. Currently, we have over 120 participants who've logged in and attending this session, both through CII Hive and YouTube. So further, I would request the participants to kindly visit the virtual exhibition at the CII Hive anytime today or in the next 10 days. Before we begin with our first session, I would request all the speakers to kindly keep their mics on mute and unmute while speaking. The first session for the day is a panel discussion on Investor Track. The discussion will focus on getting insights regarding an investor's perspective of the Indian gaming space, key aspects which attracts audiences along with some of the challenges. Additionally, panelists will share their perspectives on some of the long-term trends in the Indian gaming industry. The panel discussion will be moderated by Mr. Girish Menon, Partner and Head, Media and Entertainment, KPMG India. Our esteemed panelists for the session are Ms. Saloni Sehgal, General Partner, Lumikai, Mr. Hari Menon, Founding Partner, Play Ventures, Mr. Prateek Podar, Principal, Nexus Venture Partners, and Mr. Anuj Tandon, Head Corporate Development, Crafton. With this, I would now like to invite Mr. Girish Menon to kindly take the panel discussion forward. Over to you, Mr. Menon.
Thank you so much, Payal, and good afternoon to everybody. Good afternoon to all the panelists, and a big thank you, and also to all the viewers who are sort of tuning in right now. This topic that we have today is, the idea over here was to get a bit of a perspective around what does it take to invest into gaming in India? What do investors find attractive? What are the areas that they see which are going to be more interesting, going forward? And therefore, how do they see this entire, lay of the land sort of emerging as we go forward? Right? That's the real idea out here. And to sort of talk about that, I've got a good mix of people out here with, Hari from Play Ventures, who can give us an outside-in perspective on investing into early-stage companies in gaming. We've got Saloni from Lumikai, who's probably the only Indian-based gaming fund, and again can give us a good perspective on what are they seeing on the ground. We've got Prateek from Nexus, who have got strong experience in investing into the wider startup ecosystem in India, and they can give a bit of a outside-in perspective on that. And we've got Anuj from Crafton, who are also very actively looking at India, and therefore for them, outside in, how do they see India as compared to global markets, and how would they look at investing in India, right? So it's a good mix of of people that we have today. And when you look at gaming in India, right, there's almost two distinct phases that we've sort of seen, right? We've got this phase during 2010, 2012, where there was a big, consistent round of investments that sort of happened quite early. Since then, it sort of flattened down a bit, slowed down. But post the whole 4G revolution in India, where we've seen the gaming user base dramatically scale up, we've also seen a renewed interest by investors in the gaming landscape in India. And that seems to be something that's evolving very, very rapidly, right? But that being said, investing into gaming is also a pretty complex equation, because on one hand, you've got the complexities coming from a content and an IP business, and then how do you evaluate such businesses? On the other hand, you've got the whole digital ecosystem and reaching out to customers from a digital platform, and how do you sort of work around that? That becomes the other complexity. And then India, being in India, has got some unique aspects around, say, ad-led monetization also. So I think I want to use this opportunity today, so therefore to dig deeper into some of these questions. And and a good way to start maybe is just a bit of a soft start, and let me ask each of the panelists a quick 2-minute view on how do they see gaming in India, and what actually attracts them to gaming and investing into gaming in India. And maybe Saloni, you can start off with your perspective.
Sure. Thanks, Girish, for having us. I think it's a fantastic panel that we put together here. So looking forward to hearing everybody's perspectives. From our side, I think you've covered it a little bit. Of course, there have been certain systematic changes which have taken place in the market. We've got massive smartphone penetration. You've got like 300 million gamers. India is now becoming the largest mobile game market, overtaking the US and China. And average time spent, especially over the last year, and engagement and downloads have increased by 30 to 40%. And which is and from my experience, having tracked the market both globally and within the India market, I've never seen app usage, game usage, adoption, consumption, infrastructure all converge in this manner ever before. So, 2020 was quite a watershed moment. I think on the consumption side, what we're seeing is Indian users are unlike that of the Western markets and unlike that of the global markets, in a sense that you've got millions of users coming online and using mobile phones sometimes for the very first time. And what we like to call them is like they are digital convergence native users. By nature, they are much more open to games and platforms that are intrinsically social. They're multiplayer gamers, and soon that level of gamer sophistication is going to increase as well, where there will be a need for deeper mechanics. On the supply side, entrepreneur personas have evolved. There was a generation of gaming 1.0 founders, which is the founders that you're talking about. From our experience, we're seeing a second generation of founders. These are either experienced product managers from gaming companies or adjacent industries being attracted to the sector. Or there is a newer category of Gen Z founders who have a very inherent understanding of game mechanics. They've grown up often playing Clash of Clans games, and All-Star Games is a fantastic example of that. And these guys are the ones who are driving this new wave of innovation and making those boldest bets. But more importantly, there's one trend which is happening in India, which is what we're calling digital decolonization, right? There is a concerted urge of Indians now asserting their digital identities. And there is a almost, India first games, India first apps. And we've seen these techno-nationalistic movements happen in other markets, which have often driven gaming head first. And China is a fantastic example of that. And that means that India's growth is a little bit decoupled from that of the West. And India first gaming is the opportunities now. So
excellent, great. So Harry, just to get your perspective outside in from a global perspective on gaming in India.
Sure. So before becoming a VC, I was a founder. I've built 3 companies here in Helsinki, and one of my companies was acquired by Disney in 2011. And I think it was first time when we were working at Disney that we sort of saw the talent level of the Indian developers. And this is related to what you were saying about the first generation of the Indian gaming founders. So Disney was using a lot of sort of work for hire third-party developers that were based in Bangalore, among other cities, to sort of supplement their in-house development. And that was sort of my first my first point of contact with some of these founders, and I was really impressed with their level of technical skill, and also like they had this level of ambition, but they weren't sort of connected with the global gaming market at that point. And also my partner in the fund, Henrik, he was working with Digital Chocolate here in Helsinki, and they were using Indian-based developers to supplement sort of their development talent as well. And actually, one of those people that Henrik used to work with, a founder, is now running Encore in India. So, and there was a lot of talent around sort of live operating games for a long time as well, and keeping content fresh. I mean, Disney ended up selling some of their IP to RockYou, which then used Indian developers to keep that sort of those games going for a long time. So there was a lot of that free to play games as a service live operating talent already, and we were aware of that. But I think to Saloni's point, I think like last year clearly was a watershed moment, where as we are looking at the global gaming space, and we started seeing like more and more pitches coming into us from Indian founders looking for global investor capital, having that sort of global ambition to be building the best gaming companies in the world. And I'm based in Helsinki, Finland. Like we have 5.5 million people in the whole country, right? So we're tiny, but what we understood and what we saw as originally Finnish founders and now obviously global VCs is that you can build the best gaming companies anywhere in the world. You don't have to be in Silicon Valley. You don't have to be in Helsinki or the Nordics. I mean, it's such a global talent pool that's available, and I think it's fantastic that the Indian and like Saloni said, especially the Indian young founders are now getting into this space, and we're extremely excited about seeing like the future of the Indian gaming companies, and that's why we've done a couple of investments into India, and we'll be looking to do a lot more.
Understand. Great. Pratik, coming to you, Nexus has been is super experienced in that sense on investing into the startup ecosystem in India, and now that you are also evaluating gaming. How do you see the gaming ecosystem sort of developing, and the opportunities that are coming through, and given your experience on investing into the other tech and digital startups, how do you see this playing out?
First of all, thanks for inviting Girish. Excellent points by Saloni and Hari. We have been talking about the fact that last year was a watershed year for Indian gaming. I actually think that the best is yet to come.
Right.
My rationale. Let's take a step back. Right. Take a step back and let's just talk about content in general and gaming is just one form of content. In my mind, lots of content companies have been created in India over the past few years. Monetization has not been as straightforward yet. However, it has happened in all content companies across the world as well, whether it's Netflix or Spotify or whether it's music companies in China, that once payment penetration increases beyond a particular level, suddenly you see a surge in monetization. In my mind, the biggest problem that at least as an investor I was facing in gaming 3-4 years back, that there were two problems. One is that lack of monetization was there beyond the real money gaming space, and the other was the gaming talent was not deep enough then. Over the past 3-4 years, both those things are seeming to change. And in my mind, we are seeing a confluence of improved infrastructure, high quality talent, and increase in payment infrastructure, which should lead to extremely there's a right place to create high quality gaming companies.
Got it.
I could not have imagined 3 years back that there will be a company that will make $80-100 million revenue from India, and Pubg was able to do that, right? It was amazing. So the world is changing around us faster than we had imagined. And the example I think of when I think of this is like for example, caller tunes was a large market in India, right? Caller tunes, people were willing to pay, even though it was not entertainment for yourself, it was entertainment for someone else. Why were people able to do it? Because A, payment was easy. B, it was a form of self-expression.
Yeah.
Gaming does that better than anything else. And a lot of these emotional feelings will be now represented very beautifully in new gaming companies. So that's why I think 3 years back we were not as excited about gaming, but today I think the times are changing, and we are very excited.
No, great. I think excellent point. I think the points made on the payment infrastructure, I think, is an extremely relevant point and very timely, right? I think that change on the payment penetration we have started to see over the last 18 months, and I think that is also starting to be reflected in the levels of in-app purchases in India, which is also going up over the last 8-9 months. So I think you're right. As a confluence of these factors as they come in, I think we will see a huge explosion out here. Aruj, coming to you, I'm looking at you from two angles, right? One is your whole experience with the India market in terms of incubating and building gaming companies, right? And obviously the Crafton angle in terms of looking at the India opportunity and building on that, right? How are you seeing this play out particularly over the last 24-36 months or so?
Yeah, I mean, I sort of will agree with all the points that have been made by the panelists. We are at an inflection point. I think we have been sort of seeing the real money gaming or monetizing really well in the last 3 months. I think it's now the next 4 or 5 years. What we honestly feel is that the uh, real in-app purchases and ad-based business on the gaming business will acquire significant scale. As Pratik also mentioned, PUBG was really the trendsetter for the Indian gaming market to show that mid-core games can have large audience, can have very monetizable audience in India. And now this generation that has grown up playing PUBG is only going to graduate and become earning, and they are going to be sort of not scared to spend on gaming. So there was a lot of hesitance for spending for quality entertainment, and gaming being one. So I think we are very sort of long on the India market. Like in the midterm and the long term, the core gaming market will be sort of pretty huge. It's right now also big with the casual and other genres really going big. What we also have to realize is we need to give it time. We need to understand that Indians sort of skipped the console cycle, skipped the PC gaming cycle, and directly are mobile first gamers. So to get them to mature will take some time as well.
Got it. I think that's a fair point, and it's an interesting point because when we've done some of our research, right, and when you compare us to other countries and you look at the monetization levels, what's also very interesting to see is without exception, almost all of them have had a very strong console PC gaming history, right? Which effectively meant that gamers were used to paying for games, and outside of China, pretty much you see this reflected in most other markets. So they had that history to leverage on, and therefore paid models evolved fairly strongly. But I guess in India, that because we've leapfrogged, you're right. I think we do need to give this a little bit more time for the behavior to mature. Before I think we'll start seeing more monetization traction also.
Yeah, but we're definitely seeing some very strong green shoots of that happening.
True. Agree. So the point that one of the things that I want to start the specifics around this is essentially the point that because gaming at its core is a IP based business, right? I think as investors, right, and Saloni, let me start this with you. When you look at gaming startups, when you look at gaming studios to invest in, how do you really take your bet on an IP? How do you really take a bet on what will work, what will not, or the potential of a company or its promoter or its founder to monetize its assets, to be able to consistently come out with a pipeline of assets? How do you get that comfort for you to invest? Saloni?
Sorry, I'm on mute. Yeah, that's a great question. Girish, I think everybody talks about games being a hit-driven business, and when I tell them I'm like, well, so is venture capital, right? And so when you have to look at a games business, how do you manage and mitigate your risk and reward is to have a portfolio approach. So at least the way Lumikai looks at the market is twofold. One is, we look at the broader ecosystem. So you look at content, platform, infrastructure, tools, and tech. And even within content, gaming is an industry which has much breadth and depth even across the content genres. Unfortunately, there's a lot of misunderstanding and misinformation in India where we paint gaming as one big paint stroke, and we say real money gaming is gaming or real esports is gaming. But even within that, there various genres. You've got midcore, you've got casual, you've got hyper casual, and hence from an investor perspective, particularly, I can only give my perspective as a venture capitalist. So one has to be able to diversify the risk through that. So that's the first level of top down. The second is where does the thesis lie? We have 4 to 5 major thesis areas, particularly for the India market, that we actively then either get deals referred to us or we do some scouting. But in terms of the way we analyze and evaluate founders, there's a couple of frameworks, and we invest pretty early, so it's pre-seed, seed. Obviously, it is the founding team. That's pretty much, some criteria that you will have for the founding team about the founder, and gaming is a very competitive business as well, and you're competing with everything globally. So how does the founder, what is that special sauce that the founder has? Do they have a unique skill set? Do they have a certain technical background? Is the tech exceptional? Have they identified a white space in content which they feel that their games will be much better? So that's one framework. The second and third frameworks are around their ability to hire talent, their ability to fundraise, their ability to also be in this for the long term. So gaming is a lot about experimentation, failure, and iteration, learning and trying again. And there are very few founders with the stomach to be able to do that. And when we are looking at seed stage investments, especially if they're content plays, we think it takes 3 to 4 shots at goal to get it right. So the company needs to budget for enough runway, whether it's 14 months or 18 months or 24 months, depending on what you're building, to be able to have that much capital to be able to experiment.
Right.
In terms of the potential of how does a content genre become bigger, I think there's a combination of an top-down analysis as to analyzing what is trending globally, because gaming is also very different from that of doing e-commerce investing or broader tech investing, because there's a combination of it's called the Goldilocks rule, right? You invest too early and you have a graveyard of VR startups. You invest too late and then you miss the hype cycle. So the timing has to be just right. The zeitgeist has to be right, but also you have to be, it's a balance between having long-term transformative plays. And that then comes down to the experience of us as an investor team to be able to make that judgment call. And the last is obviously the realization that games founders, especially early stage, capital is only one of their problems. They need help with talent, they need help with strategic partnerships, they need help with navigating what's happening globally.
Sorry. Saloni, I think you've gone on pause. Hello? Saloni, we've lost you. So, let me continue. I know we'll continue with Saloni's inputs when she joins back. Hari, just to get your perspective then, right? The same context, right? You've done, you mentioned what 20 plus investments into gaming globally. When you look at that context and the same point, right? When you have studios where it's really fundamentally the IPs which sort of drive success, and there are enough examples of studios in the world who've got essentially one hit IP and then they've been piggybacking on that cycle and building on that. As an investor, when you're looking at early stage startup gaming companies, how are you looking at this, and how is do you also tend to apply a slightly different lens when you look at India as compared to some of these global opportunities?
That's a great question, and I think I'm agreeing with most of the points, though, if not all of the points that Saloni was making, because like Lumikai, we tend to invest extremely early. The majority of our investments are at the pre-seed seed stage, and almost always pre-product.
Right.
So we're not evaluating the game. I mean, we're not investing in a certain game usually or a certain IP. We're always investing in the people, in the founders, and their ability to sort of work together, learn, take feedback, iterate, incrementally innovate. And that's the way we've approached it. And I think we're much more confident and we have conviction to do that given our background as former founders, both me and Henrik, in the gaming space. And I think it's really, I think, what the gaming market has really shown is that you don't really know if a game is a hit until it is. Yeah, there's obviously ways to validate that earlier, especially on mobile free to play. I mean, you can go to market quite early on soft launch, and you can get those early cohort KPIs, which is great because that allows you to learn faster, and that allows you to iterate and even pivot or kill products early. So the time to validation is shorter, I think, on mobile, where we tend to focus most of our efforts. But I think we're not thesis driven in that sense, that we understand that there are so many different audiences nowadays for gaming, and there's so many different categories you can pursue that we don't have a certain thesis where we try to fit our investments to. But I think we are firm believers in investing in the best founders, and that's our starting point. Now, with regards to the investments we've done in India, I mean, and what we're looking at, it's pretty much the same lens. But what I would say to add to what Saloni was saying, I think we always want to make sure that the founders we back also have the ambition level that we think they should have to strive to be number one, if not number two, in their respective categories on a global basis. And I think that is where to sort of go back to Anuj's point on that you need to give time for the ecosystem to develop. I think that's I think the big difference between India and, for example, if I look at some of our Finnish companies that we've backed, or the Nordic companies, is that the domestic market for like a Finnish mobile developer is non-existent, right? It doesn't even cross their minds to create anything for the local market. I think even Supercell Games did not have any localization in Finnish for the first 5 years or so, right? So it's not even on their minds. But I think the difference here is that the Indian market domestically is already quite strong and obviously has a massive player base. So I think it's a good place to start, but I think the companies and the founders really have to have that global view as well, and the ambition to be among the best globally. And I think that give that a little bit more time, but I think that definitely is on the map. And if you take a look at, if you want to sort of look at a comparison here, you look at some of the Chinese, the Chinese companies, especially I think the new wave of Chinese companies, for example, like the guys who created Genshin Impact, for example. And there's a new wave of gaming companies from especially a lot of them are based in Shanghai for some reason. Like they are going for the global market from day one. They're not just going for the Chinese market, which is incredibly competitive, but they're going for the global market. And I think that's what we feel that the most ambitious Indian founders will have as well. That they have a great domestic market where there's a lot of volume already, but they probably will look to expand globally and be number one on a global basis.
Understand. Fair enough. Anuj, I believe you had a point to add.
Sure. I think what we also need to understand is that creating a global successful IP, even one, is a very, very big deal for gaming companies. I mean, if we are from an investor perspective evaluating they will be able to deliver two big global IPs, then that's like you've hit the jackpot, right? I mean, if you even look at some of the successful games for the last grossing games for the last 5 years, Pokemon Go, people thought it would be it would be a fad. It was launched, and all the buzz. It had its highest revenue in 2020 during a pandemic, right? And just shows how games as a business are very, very different to traditional way of viewing where to invest and what not to invest. That's why I will fully back the other two panelists, and Harry, that it's the founders who are sort of backing at the early stage that is important, because if they deliver even one global hit, I think that will be like that's massive, and you can definitely build on top of this. And there are various ways to understand how to go about it, but that's my limited point. That it's slightly different from what other investing would look like.
Understand. Fair enough. Pratik, just one point to sort of coming to you. Again, given your experience investing in other digital startups in the ecosystem, I think in the India gaming side in particular, I think one of the unique features tends to be the fact that ad-led monetization is a very large component, as compared to say global markets. And this is not unusual in the sense that a lot of digital businesses in India also have a very similar situation, right? And I think you mentioned some parts of it in terms of payment infrastructure and all of that. But when you evaluate a gaming company today in India, and you look at their revenue model and their monetization, and something which is ad led today, how do you sort of evaluate the potential and the economic viability of businesses like that?
Yeah. So, from my perspective, because we are operating a slightly larger fund, from our perspective, the expectation of outcome is larger. And if that is the case, like many fantastic businesses, which could be great for angels, early investors, supremely awesome for founders, might not be a fit for us because of the expectation of the outcome. Now, my bias on those lines has been that I have not been as excited about the ad-driven market. I actually believe, and I sincerely think that over time IIP in India will become very large. And after a few years, this discussion that we are having today, that India present is larger, but it will not happen. I think a proof point of where this has happened is Hotstar versus Netflix, right? And Netflix is pure paid. Hotstar began with only ad, slowly moving to a subscription. I'll bet that in a few years, Hotstar subscription will be significantly larger than Hotstar advertisement. And in India, to begin with, till the time we develop trust, till the time we develop payment infrastructure, till the time we have habit of paying, advertisement is a great way so that you're not dependent on investor capital, and we should do it. But for most companies who even start with ad-driven models, my bet is that the company would evolve and eventually make much more money by subscription or IAP type revenue than.
Understand. It's a fair point. And just to sort of continue with you on this, if you look at the the investing cycle, particularly the last 2 years, I mean a little bit before this, a lot of the money on the investor side was really chasing the real money game, right? And primary reason among them that was that they were able to demonstrate monetization earlier than casual gaming businesses have been able to do, right? When you sort of looked at that space, how do you see that aspect, sort of moving? And I know there are other complexities around regulatory and other angles around it also. So how would you look at a company in that space, as we go forward?
Yeah. So again, I think that is a very exciting market because monetization is proven. Because for some categories, so not for all categories, the LTV is very high.
Right.
So I would not be saying that all real money gaming companies will be very large businesses, but in categories where it's proven that long-term monetization is exceptional, I actually think that you can create multiple companies catering to different niches. That you are building poker for younger kids, poker for older people, and multiple companies can get created. All what you need to worry about is really whether your CAC to LTV is making sense or not, and whether your product has high retention, and whether your product has high deposits per day. If that is happening, fantastic business. So multiple companies will get created. It has become a competitive market. Over time, CAC increased. Regulation is an issue, but I think regulation is an issue for most spaces in India. And I would not be worried about regulation as much if I know that I'm not doing anything wrong. E-commerce was also poorly regulated. Cab delivery was also, so I'll not worry about regulation as much.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Saloni, are you able to talk now? You're on mute right now. Hello, Saloni. Fair. So let me continue actually with this theme, right? Anuj, from your perspective, so moving on from this, right? So again, when you look at the Indian gaming studios, right, and if you look at the history of how that's evolved, I think one of the challenges has been is essentially capital and resources that they have, right? In a situation like that, when you've got to build a game, develop it, and obviously do it in a way that you're also diversifying your risk, so that therefore you also need a pipeline of games, and you also need to effectively distribute the games and acquire customers. How would you look at that aspect? And when you talk to gaming founders, how would you recommend they allocate their resources, they manage their limited capital that they have in terms of balancing this equation at this point?
Yeah, I think great point, Girish. It's a little sort of for us to generalize gaming as we need multiple games. We need to have sort of large user acquisition budgets, and the history of sort of last 10-11 years, how gaming has evolved after the sort of the Google Play Store and App Stores have happened. I think we tend to miss out a few things, that there is no one size fits for all, right? Every company has a very uh, different path they take, slicing it on geography, the genre, the type of games they want to make. So I mean, in the last 10 years, we've definitely seen a lot of entrepreneurs get generated once global companies have set up shops in India. I mean, the wave of Zynga, Play Simple, all these companies have, Play Simple, Moonfrog, all of these founders have worked in Zynga, understood how global gaming markets work, what are the processes, and then sort of built their own multi-million-dollar businesses in India, right? So definitely having more learnings from all these global players have generated more better quality founders. And even in the RMG sector, I feel because of the success that they have had in the last 2 to 3 years, you will find a lot more people coming out and trying their own companies. So the quality of founders, as earlier also pointed out, is improving. I would still say that I mean, at a level where we can view India as a market, uh, the the quality is still at a stage where we cannot say that it is reaching maturity level in terms of the quality of gameplay, the quality of sort of understanding the sophistication of polish for a global audience. Uh, that is still sort of work in progress, but definitely wonderful green shoots coming out, which can make this a very sort of exciting prospect to definitely go deep and understand what's happening.
Got it. Hari, just to continue on this theme, right? Again, just want to understand your learnings from global investing, and if you were to look at founders in India, what were the 2 or 3 things that you would tell them to focus on based on what you see founders doing well globally, particularly from a gaming perspective?
So I think going back to what I was saying, that it the fact that the Indian domestic market is so large in terms of users, and that's a good starting point. But I would try to keep my eyes on the sort of the global price in the long run. And I think, again, like this, you need to give some time to this, and there will be, in the next couple of years, there will be the first sort of big successes domestically in gaming, and that will, again, once you create these success stories and almost like these hero stories, that will attract even more founder talent to the space. So I think it's a work in progress from that sense. I would say, you know keeping operations lean in the beginning is extremely important, and keeping that sort of fast cycle of iteration of learning, to, I think, to Pratik's point on not leaning too much on ad revenues. I think that is key. I think to understand how, because I think we are firm believers that the free to play business models will be the dominant business model in all types of gaming on a long-term basis, and that's just the fact. But I think that's already the reality in India, so that's good. But to understand like how to really build a free to play economy, to have that sort of spending depth available, that you can raise your LTVs from an IAP perspective to a level that supports, for example, then paid marketing, which you need to have both. You need to have paid marketing, you need to have organic traction. So I think that's a learning process, I think. But you can start off with just monetizing with ads, because that's sort of a quicker way to get to certain types of revenues. But I think long term, as discussed, the IAP economy will dwarf anything you can build on the ad side. So that's definitely one thing to keep in mind. One of the interesting things, I think, if we sort of step into distribution side a little, is what we've seen with our portfolio company, NPL Mobile Premier League, is that they actually exist, obviously partly because of the RMG reasons, but they exist outside of the App Store ecosystem completely. And I think that can be interesting, that maybe the Indian founders who are more sort of, and the Indian audience is more comfortable in working with direct downloading games to their devices, and working outside of the app stores. Maybe there are things that you're learning in this ecosystem that can be potentially applied on the global basis, especially if you can see in the US that both Apple and Google are under some pressure now with their app store policies on allowing more sort of third-party app stores to exist, and even allowing monetization outside of the app stores. So I think that can be a unique insight from the Indian company perspective, to see this up close on how do you build that sort of outside the app store distribution and monetization and all of that, and can you bring some of those learnings to the global scope as well, if the platforms sort of lose a little bit of their duopoly, so to speak. So those are interesting things to me.
Got it. Saloni, great to have you back.
Thank you. I have a bad connection today. My apologies.
No worries. But there's just one point I wanted to pick your brains on. So when you looked at the India market, and when you sort of started evaluating here, I'm sure obviously you would have also evaluated RMG as a business and as a company, and and also obviously moving on to the casual angle of it. Do you see, or are there any learnings or anything interesting or anything that the RMG companies are doing which they're getting right, which has actually relevance for the casual gaming aspect of it to learn from and to build on and to integrate? Are there any points that you can we can sort of build off?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think everybody on the panel has touched a little bit upon the mechanics of how RMG works. I think broadly, the philosophy of what RMG is doing is that it's offering instant gratification, but also training now millions of users becoming comfortable with staking small amounts of platform. So, now you're getting that comfort of people making payments and then seeing that instant gratification that they're receiving from these RMG platforms. And that begs to leads to the question is what comes next? So in our mind, the next steps are going to be, the broad-based RMG plays versus the verticalized RMG plays within each category, because the market now has even enough depth to be able to absorb that. Also, you have to, in in the case of gaming, which is very unlike that of, let's say, other industries, but you can have very massive outcomes by very small niche user base, right? So unlike some of the other businesses where you need massive TAMs to be able to deliver massive outcomes, that is not always necessarily the case for gaming. And even within gaming, for example, if you were to look at companies like Games 24/7, which I believe is one of the most fantastic businesses in the country, they're a rummy business. Yes, they've got fantasy, etc., but that's a massive, that's like a 4-5 state business at the max, and that's a massive money making machine. And Bhavin is one of the smartest founders in the industry. So there are definitely parallels to take from that. I think broadly there are 4-5 thesis areas which I believe it's important for us to look at just beyond, let's say, RMG for India. First is around social gaming. There's a higher degree of openness towards social multiplayer platforms that Indians exhibit because of this nature of being digital convergence natives. They've been exposed to everything from video, chat, social, messenger, short form video all at the same time, and there is often an affinity towards that. The second is around regional language gaming experiences. Now you've got all of even these RMG platforms offering vernacular gaming experiences, which is very interesting because little known facts, but Tamil users were the fastest growing category of regional users playing PUBG. 90% of all video consumption on YouTube happens in local languages. So it's a corollary is that entertainment for gaming will lie within, let's say, regional languages. Then games catering to newer demographics or female audiences or individuals who don't self-identify as gamers. So to some extent, Ludo King has unlocked that audience by leveraging very familiar mechanics, right? And then obviously original IP, right? Indian storytelling is now coming of age. There is a massive opportunity to build original gaming experiences which can become transmedia IP. Less than 13% of the games in the top 50 grossing titles are apps which cater to the Indian audience. So there's definitely a massive white space there. And there is clearly ability for media to transcend borders, right? So that's why you can have a Chota Beam, which will become the top kids title on a Netflix, and you have Chota Beam doing great in Brazil where people don't even speak the language. So there is, and gaming has the power to do that. Gaming, immersive IP has the power to do that. And so all of this is an open space for the market. Again, if you were to look at India in a cricket match test series, we're probably on day 1 or day 2 for gaming, but there is a journey ahead, which is obviously what we're excited about.
No, that's great to hear, and I think you basically segued on to the final point that I was hoping to hear from all of you guys in terms of what's interesting, what's exciting as you go forward in terms of the spaces to track. And I think you mentioned quite a few interesting things: social gaming, Indian storytelling, regional languages. I think a lot of that resonates with what I've been hearing. So I want to take this topic forward and get closing remarks from each of the participants. And Hari, just to hear from you, what are some of the more interesting areas or niches that you see as you continue to look deeper into gaming in India?
So I think continuing on what Saloni just said, I think one of the most interesting things is actually the expansion of the gamer demographics. So especially on mobile, if you look at like some of the global hits on mobile, they are like what we see also in our best performing portfolio companies. More and more of them are actually targeting like the female gamer, the more mature gamers. So it looks a little bit different than what Anuj might see, for example, what is the PUBG demographic, for example. So I think that is a demographic expansion, which I think will happen in India as well. And mostly they will be drawn to more casual experiences on mobile. But what we've seen in the West is that these audiences are actually incredibly loyal. They retain extremely well, and they do what we call like, it's not what you would call like whale driven spending on a free to play, but it's a wide payer base, and they keep on spending over time. So instead of thinking, hey, they're spending $1,000 on a rare sword in an RPG, these players are spending like the equivalent of a coffee cup or a latte cup, or even on a daily or weekly basis. So it's continued spending, and I think that demographic expansion, once the Indian market gets there, it will unlock a massive amount of growth in sort of the casual mobile side. So I think that can be very, very exciting.
Understand. Pratik, your perspective on this?
Yeah, so excellent points by Saloni and Hari. I'll not repeat that. I'll just add that when we are talking about gaming, beyond games, also there are a few categories where large companies can be built out of India. And I think of companies that should be created, developer tools companies that could be created. India has created so many SaaS companies and developer tools companies in other verticals. In gaming, it's just a maturity of the ecosystem where we know enough developers and we can get enough feedback from the people, and then we'll start seeing a lot of those companies being created as well. And I'm very excited about that as well, because that is actually more core to what talent we already have. So my bias is that many large companies will be created on that
So
front.
essentially, outsourcing and also gaming as a service play.
No, well, I'm thinking there's no reason why Unity should not have been built from India, or there's no reason why a gaming marketing company should not be built from India. Or like we are investors in a company which is being used by all the gaming companies, all the top gaming companies in US for their CRM management and their FAQ management. No reason why those companies should not be created from India. So when you're talking about gaming companies, I think there are other side verticals which should also.
That's a very interesting point. Yeah, it's a very interesting point. It's probably not the more, it's probably the less glamorous side of gaming, but also at the same time probably has got a lot of potential. And like you said, maybe leverages some of the existing skill sets Indian service companies already have, right? I think it's a very, very valid point. Anuj, just to, then therefore to close, the perspective on this again, asking you to look at both your hats, right? Your experience in terms of how the Indian gaming industry itself has evolved, and with Krafton, what are some of the more interesting areas that you are seeing evolving as you look at the next 3 years in India?
Yeah, I think we need to have a little bit of perspective. I mean, there are already companies which are double-digit $1 million with upper 60-70% EBITDA margins in India in gaming, which probably none of the investors were able to track. Some of the founder friends were able to track and stuff, which have already been built, and they are being built as well, right? So of course that's why funds like Lumikai have to have specific sector focus and thesis to track out these breakouts. So last 10 years, I would say that a lot of these companies have been missed by the traditional VC space. As a developer who has been, I believe I'm super excited about local content becoming popular, not just in India, but globally. That's something which is, I mean, just look at the console cycles, just look at, there is just content about Greek mythology, about Vikings. It's gonna run out soon. You're gonna come to this massive cultural repository of stories that we have had for like more than 2,000, 3,000 years. And this is, I'm not speaking from the perspective of Krafton, but as a personal developer who loves to play a lot of games, I feel that is one thing which will unlock a lot of opportunities for founders as they mature in making much more polished games. In the next 5 years, Indian-based content in gaming will be a massive opportunity.
Got it. No, I think that makes a lot of sense, and I think this sort of dovetails, pretty much with, I think a lot of what we've spoken about in the last 45 minutes or so, and essentially, the potential of the gaming market in India is sort of like Saloni said, day one of the test match. There's a long way to go. The opportunity is large. The user side of the equation, we're already starting to see traction. I think as monetization starts getting picked up more and more over the next year or two, you will see much more larger companies of scale that's coming up. And I think your points on the social angle of it, on the Indian storytelling and the Indian content and the Indian culture being leveraged, regional audiences, newer demographics, I think all of that syncs up very well with what opportunity that exists in gaming. So with that, thank you so much, for your time and your insights. And I hope that even for the viewers, this has been interesting inputs that have come through here. So thank you so much, all of you. Thanks for your time, and look forward to keeping in touch.
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you to all our panelists for taking out time and sharing your valuable insights. Thanks, Girish, for moderating the session so well. With this, we come to the end of this session, and we'll start our next session soon in 5 minutes. So I would request everyone to stay tuned. We'll be starting at 4 p.m. Thanks, everyone. Thanks again.
Hello.
Hello. Yes, hi, Mr. Justin. We can hear you.
Hi, great. I just sent an email around. I was having some issues logging in on my Mac, but managed to figure it out.
Great. Hi, Siddharth.
Hi, Payal. Hey, Justin.
Hey, Sid. How are you doing?
Good. How are you?
Busy. It's just been a hectic few weeks, but good busy.
That's good. Good busy is always good.
Yeah, can't complain.
Are you back here now, or are you still in Japan?
No, I'm still in Tokyo. I'm unlikely to be able to get back now until I get the vaccine. Tokyo just extended its state of emergency for another 2 weeks. Yeah, there's unfortunately little likelihood, but given that everything's on video now, it doesn't make too much of a difference.
That's true.
Yeah, at some point I'd like to go back and see my family. It's been about 9 months, but to be honest, quite enjoying tourist-free Japan with half-price hotels and the rest of it.
All right. That's a good thing. And you know Japanese, right? You can speak the language.
I do. Yeah, I've been living here now on and off for a few years. So if I didn't speak the language at this point, that would be a serious personal failing on my part. And of course, Japanese people, the minute you speak any English to them, will run for the hills. So somewhat of a necessity. Sid, so I'd sent over some just thoughts on areas we could cover. I don't know if there's any particular format. I recognize this is kind of a fireside chat, so we can keep it fairly informal and free flowing. But you know, I'm happy to talk about you know, kind of, I guess, you know, what we're looking for in founders. You know, should you raise VC? You know, what we look for. You know, some various tips here and there. And would love to get your perspective as well. You know, obviously you've been both an operator and an investor, but happy to keep it fairly organic.
Yeah, that was the plan. I had the same thoughts in mind for the flow.
Oh, Tika.
Sure. So, Siddharth, shall we start? Justin, are we good to go?
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. So I'll just start. Welcome back, everyone. And we'll now move on to our next session, which is a fireside chat on fundraising for gaming startups, decoding the secrets. The discussion will focus on the nuances of fundraising for gaming startups in the gaming industry from an investor standpoint, covering various aspects like what investors typically look for while investing in a startup in terms of operating and financial metrics, valuation drivers in the sector, and challenges faced by investors. We have with us two eminent speakers for today's fireside chat, Mr. Siddharth Keria, CEO, Nodwin, and Mr. Justin Keeling, General Partner, Lumikai Limited. May I now request and invite Mr. Siddharth Keria to kindly take the discussion forward. Over to you, please.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome, Justin. Such a pleasure to host you for this talk. So Justin, let's dive right in. You've had a really interesting journey. You've been associated with the digital and the gaming space for almost all your life. You know, having been associated with names like Comcast, Fox, Streamline Studio, operating side of things, you've been an in the past, and I know the last 3-4 years you've been on the whole investment journey. How does, you know, one, it would be interesting for everyone to hear how this journey has panned out for you, and two, I think what is more interesting for me is because I've had a similar journey as yours. Does that change your investing lens? Do you have a different investing lens when you look at companies because you've been an operator for so long for yourself?
Yeah, so that's a great question, Sid. And just to start, I wanted to thank everyone for the opportunity to chat, provide perspective. Hopefully this will be useful and a fun chat for everyone listening. Sid, you're correct. My background is fairly atypical in the VC space. I've been an operator and a builder for about 18 years now in global gaming and digital media. And half of that has been in Western markets, Los Angeles with Comcast and London with News Corp, and then back in the second half of my career with UTV, and then a couple of startups of my own. And I've been lucky to see 4 or 5 exits during that time, 2 in global markets and then also 2 in India. And I think, you know, as a consequence of that, you know, and I'm fairly new to the VC circuit, I still see this process more from a founder's perspective. And in fact, one of the founding principles that we set up Lumikai with was to be the VC that we always wanted as former founders. And so I think, you know, for us, when we have discussions with founders for the first time, you know, it's interesting in that, you know, a lot of founders see the VC pitch sort of like an entrance exam, and they tell us what we think we want to hear. And, you know, we're building this thing which is like esports meets daily fantasy meets the metaverse. You know, like the idea is kind of gone through this kind of almost VC pitch generator. And, you know, on the other side, we have founders that we talk to who, you know, they have these really revolutionary ideas and they feel like the VCs won't get it. So they end up pitching us something which is maybe a little bit less ambitious. So I think as former operators, we spend a lot of time trying to make sure that all our interactions, discussions, and meetings with founders, they don't feel like these kind of, you know, winner takes all entrance exam, kind of high pressure environments, it's okay not to have all the answers. This is an iterative process, especially within game development. Let's jam together, let's figure it out, but you have to come to the table with honesty.
No, that's great. So I think this is Justin, this is a great segue for everyone here to know a little more about your fund. What kind of investments do you do? What's your ticket size? What's the stage of investment that you come in at? It's great that it's a collaborative process and you're not necessarily looking at intermediaries to get the deals to you, but it would still be very interesting for, I think, our listeners to understand where you are at in your fund and what's your investment thesis or philosophy.
Right. So, so there's a couple of ways to answer that. I think the quick version is that we are an early stage gaming and interactive media fund. We typically invest anywhere between as early as $200,000 checks up to 2 million. We're investing in 15 to 20 companies over the life cycle of this fund one. We look at content, we look at tools, we look at tech, infrastructure, and platform plays. We're fairly early in our cycle. We've only been up for about, I think, 5 months. We've announced 2 deals, one of which was this week. Both of those are content plays, but the next couple that we're going to be announcing will be closer to the tools, tech, and platform side. I think for us, so then just the second way to answer your question is to pull back a little bit, which is to say that, if you look at gaming over the last 40 years, this is an atypical industry. It's a confluence of technology and culture and art. And every new cycle of gaming over this last 40 years has been additive to the one before rather than cannibalistic. And I think that's really atypical versus, let's say, some of the other media, I guess, kind of incumbents and sectors that have been disrupted. Every new cycle that's come in, from arcade to console, from console to PC, from PC to mobile, and now where we're going towards kind of games as destinations, has expanded the addressable market rather than cannibalized the last. And I think what that does, and I think crucially within that, each of these new cycles have created new touch points for more gamers to come into the ecosystem. We have about 2.5 billion gamers in the world right now. And in each of these cycles, you've also seen new incumbents emerge. So back from the arcade days, you had, the likes of Midway and Atari. Then at console, you had, the Nintendos and the PlayStations and the Xboxes. And then through to PC, you saw the rise of Valve, Steam, Riot Games, Blizzard, through to mobile with Supercell, King, through to what you have now, which is the Robloxes and the Minecrafts. And, each of these new cycles have created new investment opportunities that have been completely fresh in the market. Now, that makes gaming incredibly fertile as an investment space. So that, I think, is the broad context for why we're interested in gaming. I think you couple that with the depth of the vernacular culture and the scale of the market potential in India, and the availability of talent from an engineering and artistic perspective, which we have in India. I think all of those stars have aligned to create an opportunity, which for us is once in a generation. So I think broadly, gaming, of course, we're seeing the rise of sector-focused funds worldwide, but in India specifically, we're now kind of one venture cycle in, and a lot of the smartest founders in this space, this is a creator's market. They can raise money from anywhere. What they're really looking for is a fund that has been in the trenches, that's built these companies, that understand the unique inflection points around gaming, that can open strategic doors for them, that can hire best talent for them, and that can potentially provide exits for them as well. So the entire fund has been set up really, I think, from a founder's perspective, but also to be really, really engineered to take advantage of the opportunity which presents itself, I think, for the first time at the moment.
Yeah, that's really heartening to know, because having worked in this ecosystem for as long as I have, I think there are 2 pain points that I hear entrepreneurs say all the time. One is the whole concept of dumb capital, right? So there are people who are willing to give money, but then the question is, what else are they bringing to the table? And I think you've already answered that, what you bring to the table as a fund, given the pedigree that you have. I think the other question, Justin, also is, and this has happened more in the last 5 years than it was happening before that. I think a lot of entrepreneurs are today asking, what is that magic formula? What should we look at? Should we look at unit economics? Should we look at profitability? Should we look at the network effect? And I know that it's not one or more, it's not just one thing that you need to look at, but I think it'll be interesting to hear your perspective. What is it that these entrepreneurs should look for to be a part of your portfolio or to be funded in general? Because it's been fairly confusing over the last few years, and that happened especially after the debacle of WeWork. From all of a sudden, the whole narrative shifted from network to all of a sudden profitability. And I think a lot of entrepreneurs are just confused today. They just don't know which way to go.
So there's no simple answer to that, of course.
Yeah.
I think if we break it down a little bit. So look, I think to pull back a bit, as a fund, I think we're unusual in that, we've been in this space for a long time, both as operators and investors. So we have fairly good, and a lot of the LPs that we have in the fund are the platform holders and some of the global leaders in this space. So we have very good visibility in terms of where the market's going. And as a consequence of that, we're very thesis driven. So for us, we've identified 10 to 15 areas which, having looked at the India specific inflection points, but also the kind of journey of other markets, we feel we have very high conviction on that there's a lot of white space and a lot of upside in each of those areas. Within that, we then essentially, we do a sweep of the various players in those different thesis areas. And we do a lot of diligence and we do a lot of thinking around this. And then we back the one or two founders in each of those spaces that we feel we can really catalyze. I think from a content perspective, there are certain metrics we can talk about which are fairly standardized. I think, broadly, retention for us is very important. We invest early. We're a seed stage fund. Some of our companies are post-revenue, 5-10 million downloads. But by and large, a lot of the founders we're talking to, it's very, very early stage. So there's no real unit economics to speak of. Of course, we emphasize the importance of getting our unit economics right from the start. But ultimately, I think, retention is super important. You're looking at 35 to 40% in content. D1 retention really is a minimum to compete on a global scale. D7 of ideally 25%, and D30 of ideally above 10%. That's within content. I think the other thing we're really interested in is, I broadly feel that Indian gamers are much more sophisticated than, let's say, some of the creators making products for them believe they are. And we've seen this, right? We've seen this with Supercell and PUBG and all of these global incumbents that have come in, and these games, despite conventional wisdom, have done incredibly well in India. And what we're interested in is really visionaries who are not looking so much to the past, but looking to the future, and really trust the 400 million gamers. A large subset of those in India are much more sophisticated than I think what a lot of builders give them credit for. And within that, it's less about, so obviously retention is an important metric. All of these things you mentioned in terms of unit economics are important, but for us, it's really about finding the right founders in the right space. So, I think, there's a few different areas we can kind of go into here. I think from a founder perspective, we're very keen on founders that are great storytellers. This lets them attract great talent, customers, and future investors for their next round. Trust is super important to us. So high integrity, high transparency, and high conviction. They need to know that they're in this space for a reason. But at the same time, they're open to feedback, they're open to iteration. And the good thing about VC is that it gives you both the capital and the time essentially to experiment and get it right. In gaming, especially in content, it takes often 3 or 4 shots on goal to get it right. We get that. We've been through this cycle and we're very comfortable with that. Not all VCs are comfortable with that. And in tools and tech, you may be pivoting multiple times before you reach some kind of scalable product market fit. So for us, I think, there's no real silver bullet or magic formula here. It's more really about having the right team in the right space.
So yeah, that's great. And teams have been very, very important. But one of the struggles that a lot of startup ecosystem also goes through in India is that the founders, and they need to be great storytellers, they need to have all the essential ingredients. I think one of the things that they struggle with a bit is to get really smart people on board, right? One of the things you get is what kind of talent are you attracting? Because of various things. I mean, it's a startup. Is it going to work? Not going to work? Do I want to be associated with a startup if I'm really smart? So do you have any views given the journey that you had, and you've had some of the best brands that you worked with, and or the biggest brands you worked with? You've been a startup entrepreneur yourself or worked with startups. Do you have any advice to give to some of these upcoming budding entrepreneurs how to attract good talent? Because while we a lot of times we know it's the entrepreneur that tries to do everything from a office boy to the CEO's job in a company, but ultimately it's the team that builds the company along with the entrepreneur.
Yeah.
And you need some smart, dedicated, driven people there.
Right. So I think so aside from being a great storyteller, you need to really understand your thesis. What are you building? What's your North Star here? There's two ways of looking at a proposition. One is the what you're building, and one is the why of what you're building. And I find that the founders that understand the why of what they're building tend to attract better talent. We invested in a company this week called All Star Games, and the story is that they're building cricket games for a mid-core market. But that's the what of what they're building. The what is actually less important than the why are they building it? Why are they building in that space? Because these guys know, as we do, that, as I mentioned earlier, out of the 400 million domestic gamers that we have, a large portion of them are much more sophisticated than the products that are being built for them by other studios. And users want a beautifully crafted experience that also resonates culturally. So when you have that kind of North Star mission, you're able to go out and you're able to talk to people and bring them on board. And in fact, these guys, they're relatively new in their journey. They're kind of Gen Z founders, mid to late 20s. And some of the talent they've managed to attract to their company, not just by being great storytellers, but by actually having a foundational mission and a vision, they've managed to punch way above their weight.
Yeah, that's good to know. But at the same time, Justin, a lot of times we hear, and I hear this a lot given in the esports ecosystem, is that some of the biggest and the best games in India are not made in India. And we keep getting asked that question, where is the Indian content ecosystem going? Will we have some of the games? And of course, on the other side, we get asked the same question around the platforms and tech as well. Because again, the platforms for some of these are not homegrown. So what's your view on it, Justin? Was it lack of capital all this while, or was it lack of vision, or was it a mix of both that we don't have some of the those world-topping, chart-topping games or platforms that are homegrown in this country? Because media has seen that shift very, very clearly in the last few years. So be it a Netflix or an Amazon, their growth in India has come from regional content. Their growth has not come from international, global content alone. Do you want to just talk about some of that as to what has ailed India in getting up there in terms of gaming, in both terms of both content and platform, which is rear view mirror looking, and the other is what is your view? What will get us there? And I'm sure you are backing some of those stories, but it'll be interesting to know that.
Yeah, I think a lot of it comes down to, so look, I think there's no shortage of talent. And, we've spoken to nearly, 450 game companies and interactive media companies over the last 6 months alone. And we're blown away by the level of talent and ambition. But, we broadly see, if you categorize from the supply side and the founder side, there's kind of a gaming 1.0 entrepreneur who's been in the market now maybe for 10, 20 years. And maybe they've grown up through kind of like the service business cycle, and they've built up a lot of experience, and now they're trying to pivot into something new, which we're very excited about. And some of those founders, they have the history and the backing, but maybe they haven't had necessarily the financing or the opportunity with a fund that understands this space and is willing to take bets that are a little bit riskier, or let's just say not riskier, but they're willing to be more patient with their capital. So I think that's one. I think the second cohort, which is really interesting to us, which is I think more forward thinking, is this company that we backed this week. These guys, we didn't have a culture in India of gaming traditionally. We didn't grow up with Nintendo and PlayStation, and these guys didn't grow up playing these games, right? So, but what we are seeing, which is really interesting, is especially amongst these next generation, what we call gaming 2.0 Gen Z founders, is they have grown up with the best of global mobile games. They have a native kind of like almost instinctive understanding of what it takes to build something which is global scale and global quality. And they're marrying that to culture which resonates locally. So I think part of it is the fact that, yes, there has been a lack of understanding and patient capital in this space. And obviously, that's a big part of our mission, is to build a lighthouse where founders can come and talk to us honestly about their dreams and aspirations, and they don't need to recalibrate for VCs. Talk to us honestly about what your dreams and aspirations are, and we'll give you honest feedback. But at the same time, we are seeing a really exciting new generation of founders, especially of the younger generation who have grown up with these titles, who are looking to build in India for the world in a way which we hadn't seen. And I've been active in India now for about 10, 12 years. I didn't see this 5, 6 years ago. I think the third aspect of it is that there's just more cultural acceptance around this space. We've seen some really great success stories in games over the last couple of years from an India perspective. And we're starting to see, I think, more of that percolate down. And if you look at the number of game developers, back when I had my first startup in India 6, 7 years ago, there were maybe 20, 25 game studios. A lot of those were kind of outsourcing houses. At latest count, we have over 400 studios, and that number is rising exponentially. So I think there's an increase in kind of the aspiration horizon of a lot of the young founders. There's an increase in just dedicated capital and focused on this space. And it's not just us. I mean, certainly since we've come into the market and we play very nice with other VCs, we speak to them every day. There is a broadening interest in supporting these kinds of founders, which really create a terrific environment. There's never been a better time to be a creator in this space. And then just the quantum of founders that are coming into the market, the amount of developers that are already there has risen geometrically in the last 5 years.
Okay. Yep. I agree with that. And it's very interesting. You said not gaming. I remember about 10 years back, I had built a thesis around investing in animation. And I faced the same problem, that in India, we did not grow up watching that much animation. And hence, from a sheer creativity standpoint, when we were creating Indian animation versus we were outsourcing houses, we were doing much better as outsourcing houses rather than creating Indian animation, because we didn't have some of those sensibilities, right? So yeah, I mean, I see some of that translating into gaming, and it's very good to know that some of that is changing with the gaming 2.0, as you mentioned. The other question that a lot of new founders or early founders, especially that are taking seed capital at your stage, I think the two questions that they ask is, when they get a seed investor in, how should their journey of funding be? How long a legway should they have when they are raising seed capital? Because while we all know it's a laborious and a long process, but we also know it takes you away from your core.
Right.
So what is your suggestion? How much runway should they have when they are raising funds? And then, because then sooner or later, they'll have to be back in the market if they have to continue their growth story to raise the B, C stage. Any views on that?
Yeah, absolutely. This is a great question. And I think, it's worth, I think the first question founders need to ask themselves is, should you raise venture capital? And having been, a 5X founder myself, I mean, ideally, this is probably not very on brand, but I would tell founders that if you don't need to raise capital and you can bootstrap as far as you can go, you should do that. And there are obviously various funding mechanisms as publishers, as VCs, and, they're all frankly complementary. I think one of the things that founders really need to think about is, how much do you really need to raise for your business? The VC cycle assumes some element of exponential growth at key inflection points. So how much do you need to raise to achieve your next major milestone is another way to put it. Some founders raise too little at seed, and then they find themselves having to come back, into another raise cycle too quickly, which can take time away from the core business, as you mentioned. There's another cohort which, frankly, can get a little bit high on their funding process. They end up raising too much too early. We've seen this in some of the global Series A and even seed deals recently. But they struggle at the next round valuation where, the follow-on investors, they'll look at the historical performance and be expecting a 5 or 10x, growth from the prior round. So I think really thinking very carefully about the quantum of capital you need to raise to get to the next inflection point is super important. And as you said, the fundraising process takes time and energy. We've met, plenty of teams that have great metrics, but they simply aren't prepared for the level of diligence, oversight required to close an investment. It usually takes 2 or 3 months. But I think the other side of it is that, the experience of fundraising, especially with the VC, where they really look at your metrics in depth and they do diligence and they understand your product roadmap, can also be a transformative one for the founders. It's an opportunity for them to step back and really evaluate the key levers and the goals of their strategy. So, there's no one size fits all answer to this. I'd love to say that it's 3x or 5x your previous round, or it's 9 months, or it's 12 months. But I think you need to balance those, I guess, 2 extremes of raising and then need to raise again in 6 months, versus raising. And I think this is actually the bigger issue, is that you're trying to raise too much. All of our rounds, luckily or unluckily, have been massively oversubscribed. And one of the conversations that we really hammer home with our founders is like, raise as much as you need to for the runway that you need to get to the next important milestone that you have. And that it's very different in terms of whether it's tools or content or infrastructure. So it's a little bit case by case, but as long as you're balancing those 2, I think, ends of the spectrum, and you're talking with your VC that can hopefully give you guidance on this, you'll end up in the right place.
Okay. Justin, I am cognizant of time, and I think we are running out of time that we had set out for ourselves. At this point in time, I would, instead of asking a pointed question, I would just ask you to give your 2 bits to upcoming entrepreneurs who are looking for funding, who are looking to build scale, who are looking to, build legacy and a great business. What are some of the top 2-3 things that they should always keep in mind, whether or not they go for funding, but to build great gaming businesses so that the whole ecosystem develops in the right direction?
Right. So I think, we invest in companies, but primarily we invest in people. So, experience is extremely valuable, but in lieu of experience, conviction is fine. You can be, we're seeing founders now that are straight out of college. They kind of semi-flunked out, but they've been winning hackathons, and they have a very strong conviction on what they're building, and the conviction then also translates into what the thesis is, the kind of, not the what you're building, but the why we're building. Have a very clear vision on what you're building. I think having a culture of innovation is super important. All the best creative companies worldwide in gaming do this. Build, expect to fail. Not every product's going to work. Learn quickly from those mistakes, and then take those learnings forward. And Nintendo does this. Supercell does this. Ideally, you don't want to be tying up resources in something for months when there's there's much easier ways to prototype a game and find the fun. I think some of the other things we've talked about in terms of having the right founder profile and the right team. I think beyond that, just from our perspective, from a VC perspective, just be transparent and be open with your problems. That nothing is, if you've got the right team in the right space at the right time, you're already 80% of the way there. Everything else can be solved through a direct communication about what are your dreams, what do you feel you could do. And I think beyond all of the strategic advice that we can provide, and the connections and the potential exit options and all the rest of it, I think a lot of founders need to know that they should feel comfortable using their VCs, especially VCs who've been through this cycle as entrepreneurs, as kind of sounding boards, right? Like, just someone you can call up late at night and say, I've had this idea, or I've got this problem. I need ideas. I need feedback. I need to just sanity check this thing. And maybe we don't have all the answers, but we can probably connect them with someone who does. So I think transparency and trust, given this is like a 5 to 7 to 10-year journey, has to be established from the beginning. And it's not for everyone, right? But I mean, I think if you can get to that point where you feel comfortable talking to your VC partner and really engaging them as a partner versus someone who just needs to be placated, you're going to get the best out of that relationship.
Yeah, great. So for everyone who's listening, I'll just sum up what the three things that Justin said, which are really important for you. One, focus on the why more than if you focus on the what. What is important, but why is more important, because that will build sustainability. Two, as I used to call it, fail forward. Don't be afraid of failure, fail forward, continue to learn, continue to pivot. That's the only way to build scale. And three, be transparent. Think of your VC as your partner, because at the end of the day, I often say this, when you go to a venture capitalist and you're looking for funding, it's a marriage. You're getting into bed with them. You're going to stay within that marriage for a long period of time. Make them your partners, make them your allies, be as transparent and open as you can, because unless you draw from their experiences, and trust me, VCs have a lot of experience because they have met very many companies, they've invested in a lot of companies. They have, they can draw experiences and failures and learnings from all over the place. Use that more than you use the capital. And I think that's in my mind, that's the mantra of success.
Yeah.
Yep. All right.
I would love to hear more about your perspective from a founder's journey, but we'll table that for another panel at some point.
Yes. I think we've run out of time, Justin. Payal?
Yeah. Thank you so much, Siddharth, and thank you, Justin, for a lovely session, and thank you for taking out time for joining us today. We'll have to close this session. We've come to the end of this session now, and we'll soon start our next session.
Right.
I would request participants to kindly stay tuned with us. We'll start our next session at 4:45. So yeah,
Right.
thank you so much. Thanks again, Siddharth and Justin.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye.
Hi guys.
Hey Rohit, hi.
Hi Bharat. How are you?
All good, mate. All well. How about you?
I think good. You're all well. You're all well. I think we've never met, but I've heard a lot about you from my team.
My pleasure. I hope we are able to do enough justice with you guys.
I like that. So you're based in Delhi, is it, Bharat? Gurgaon?
Based out of Gurgaon. Yeah.
Okay. And have you been in Group M for a while now?
Yeah, I think it's been 7 years now.
Wow.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So is this session is live or?
I don't think so. It's yet to start, I think.
No, the session is live. Hi Rohit, hi Bharat.
Oh, so okay.
Hi, Payal.
Hi.
Hi, Payal.
So we'll just wait for a couple of minutes. We'll start around 4:45.
Sure.
Yeah.
So are you guys all still working from home, or you guys are back to office, Bharat?
We are until this week. So we plan to join on Monday.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. We are not that lucky, so I think we will have to continue working from the home. So let's see how the global policies will change, and when we get that ray of hope of bringing a final line difference between work life and the personal life.
Yeah, I know. I don't know how will we initially react when we go and meet everybody in office.
Yeah.
True.
But Bharat, overall, the business for you during COVID, has it kind of, I'm guessing, has only gone better, no?
Yeah, definitely. I think the way digital spends have increased so far, both organically plus new categories getting unlocked. Even the gaming category, we never thought
Correct.
for us it will be so much big in terms of driving a different incremental revenue. Talking to your hard cash gaming categories like poker,
The real money gaming, yeah.
real money gaming, and then dating as a genre again is becoming a next category for us. All the dating apps are very aggressively spending in India on
Oh,
digital.
it's
Yeah,
interesting.
yeah. So all your Tinder, OkCupid, Bumble, all that is coming into a rally. So yeah, so that's how I think overall from a 2020 point of view, what we thought definitely a good start in 2021.
Nice, nice. And these dating apps, Bharat, are they spending more on performance or overall awareness?
I think it's a mix of both. So it's definitely a full funnel journey what they're trying to build. So definitely from awareness top funnel, it's primarily the video, what you might be seeing on the linear TV as well for some of these brands.
Correct.
And then definitely from a middle funnel and lower funnel, driving engagement, remarketing, personalization is something what they're aiming at.
Interesting.
Hey Rahul, hi. I think Rahul, you're on mute.
Okay.
Yes.
Mute on mute. Right.
Hey, Rahul.
Yeah, hi Rahul.
Hi.
Hello.
Yeah,
Rahul?
Yeah,
Yeah,
Rahul.
okay, now you're here. Okay, thank you.
I think Vikash has also joined.
Hi, I'm visible.
Hey Vikas, hi.
Yeah, hi.
Hi, Vikas. Hi.
Yeah, hi Rohit. Hi Rahul.
Hi.
Hi Bharat. Yeah, I'm good. How are you guys?
Good, good, yeah, going on. As Bharat was saying, eagerly waiting for offices to open.
Yeah, you are right.
Last month, towards the end of last month. And then there's again night curfew started, so a night shift had to then again move back home. He called all the guys back to his office and then night shift again. You know. Hi Prithvi, how are you?
Hi, hi.
Hi,
Prithvi, hi.
Hi, hi, everyone.
Yeah, hi.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. I believe everybody is here. Shall we start? Good to go? I'll just begin. Welcome back, everyone. We are now moving on to our first session of week one, which is a panel discussion on advertising in gaming, a bankable opportunity. The discussion will focus on the advertiser's viewpoint in the gaming market, the economics of the same, and the prospects which advertisers see in the gaming market in India. The focus areas will also include what kind of genres will attract ads and how in-game advertising will pan out in the future. The panel discussion will be moderated by Mr. Rahul Pandey, founder and CEO, Bonsai. Our esteemed panelists for this session are Mr. Vikash Jaiswal, founder and CEO, Ludo King, Mr. Rohit Sharma, co-founder and CEO, Talked, Mr. Bharat Khatri, country head, X-Axis India, and Mr. Prithviraj Mazumdar, industry head, gaming and services, UCO India. May I now invite and request Mr. Rahul Pandey to kindly take the panel discussion forward. Over to you, please.
Thank you, Payal. Thank you so much. This is panel and one of the most interesting, on the weekend, playing few games and finding out that what all new games have come from different companies in this space. I think we all know. I think there's a lot of noise. If you can, may I request everyone to just put your mic on silent, please?
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. I think once again, happy Friday. Good evening to all of you. This is Rahul. I represent a company called Bonsai, which is into creative advertising. It's my honor in 8 to 10 months phenomenally well, especially pandemic, which has given a boost to the gaming industry, a boost to more and more consumption of games, more and more customer coming in and playing games, and also the as I hear from some of the industry's leader that the session time, the time spent on the gaming is on rise. I think pandemic has set new rules, has augmented the speed of adoption, particularly on gaming in a big way. And today's session is a very, very interesting mix of people from our industry. Let me Payal has mentioned about the names, and let me just give a little brief and start with some of the opening questions with my panelists. So I'll go one by one, and please keep typing your questions in the chat, and if the time permits, we will pick up a few of these and throw it to our panel to give an answer. So let me first introduce the person who kind of builds the game. The person who is called the Ludo King. Vikash Jaiswal. Who is the founder and CEO of Gamification Technology, India's most popular and the most hit game, Ludo King. Vikas is setting up new benchmarks in the gaming industry, and I'm really proud to welcome once again into this panel. And Vikas, to you, my opening question, which will set the tone. Thanks. So which will set the tone is that, like I said, gaming vertical in India is seeing a massive growth, and especially in the last 8 to 10 months, I'm sure the numbers are like a double-digit growth happening here. Do we see a higher consumption of the advertising also in the coming future, knowing that this huge adoption is going forward? So, what are your views? You'd like to open the discussion with that, Yeah, Vikas, over to you.
Yeah, sorry. Can you repeat the question? Yeah, sorry.
Because what I meant is that the game adoption has or the roof, is growing, especially in the last pandemic 8 to 10 months. The gaming vertical has grown. Do you see the advertising in the gaming vertical of a growth path, and what's your view about it?
Yeah, got it. So thanks, Rahul, for introducing me. My answer is definitely agree that gaming vertical in India is seeing a massive growth. I recently came across a report that mobile game developers generated about $43 billion in revenue in 2020. And despite the upcoming challenges around IDFA, the new challenge which is about to come, it's expected to still grow at 118% year on year to be a $94 billion business by 2025. This is about mobile advertisement. More than 90%, as you know, as we experience or in the according to the report, more than 90% users are not payers. So advertising model is the best fit monetization model to be adopted for free to play games, just like Ludo King or Karen King game and other Indian games. Additionally, 80% of players are, more than 80%, I would say 90% are happy players with the ad-supported model. For more pointers to add here regarding this consumption, today mobile manufacturers are building very affordable handsets with good mobile hardware specifications. This means we developers are able to provide even better quality games. Another good thing is mobile networks from last 2.5 years are providing very cheap internet data. And we have seen during this pandemic, more new players have been introduced to gaming ecosystem. These all are signs that there are a growth in all aspects of the gaming sector, and especially India, thereby creating more demand to serve players. Thank you.
No, really insightful, because I think the number you mentioned about $43 billion kind of revenue in the last year, and it's going to go multi-fold. I think it's amazing to see, and I can only see that the time is going to come where I think again will hook on to those old style, games, but obviously with your insight and when it comes to advertising, my longtime friend, I would love to welcome him, Rohit, who is the founder of Pocket Mobile Ads. I think he has built an amazing company, which is currently serving Singapore, Southeast Asia, India, and a MENA region. I think it's one of those companies from India who got acquired from one of the biggest group from Japan, AnyMind, and he's really shown some great roadmap for many entrepreneurs in India, and I'm particularly fan of Rohit. So just excuse me that if I'm a little bit more talking about Rohit, but Rohit is a great entrepreneur. He runs gaming ad monetization company Pocket, and I would like to welcome Rohit with this initial question. Rohit, is that we're seeing rewarded video format in games doing well, and I think we all know that the videos, as per everyone's consumption, is growing. What's your view and what's your take on this? Particularly the kind of size of a company which you run across different geography, across different markets. What's your view about this this format? Over to you,
Yeah, sure.
Rohit.
Yeah, sure. Thanks a lot for such nice word. Even my investors didn't talk so hard of me when I gave them a good exit. So thank you so much. Yeah, but coming to the point, yeah. See, I think we have, as most of you know, Pocket is very clearly a mobile games focused ad platform. In India alone today, we get almost 220 million users coming to our platform every month playing games. And as a company, we have built a lot of data, lot of analytics around it, lot of audience data, because as Bharat knows that, kind of buying is moving from media to audiences, and even if you might be strong in a certain category, you need audience profile and data and so on and so forth. But yeah, I think coming on to the gaming genre, some very interesting data points which we have seen, as I said, almost 220 million people coming onto our platform. Now, as Vikas mentioned, there are certain interesting positives and still certain negatives about the gaming ecosystem from even the monetization point of view. Number one, if you look at our network today, more than 98% of games played by Indians are global games, are not games coming from India. So I think like Vikas and team have done a phenomenal job of building such a large game from India. There are still game publishers and game developers in the IAP, in the free to play, in the hyper casual business, are not producing games for India per se, right? So there is a huge opportunity there. But to some extent, they are also right, because everybody has as success as Ludo King, because monetization still remains a challenge. Most of the casual, I don't know what are Vikash's numbers, but most of the casual games make large amount of revenue through in-app purchase, which is significantly lower in India, very, very low in India. And therefore, these gaming companies also do not spend money on customer acquisition, because why should I get a paid user when the user will not give me a great TV revenue, right? So that's one kind of data point. So predominantly games that are played are still global. IAP is significantly lower. But as Vikas mentioned, therefore, advertising becomes a very high opportunity for publishers to monetize through rewarded video ads or whatever it is. So for us, for example, during the last 1 year, or during COVID, our actually revenues have gone up by more than 40%, because more and more advertisers have embraced gaming as a category. 30% of our overall revenue still come from in-game integrations and innovation. 30% come from vanilla media like rewarded video ads and interstitials. But yeah, I think the revenue is really going up. More and more brands are now embracing gaming in a big way. But I still feel, and obviously programmatic has gone up. A lot of publishers now can get revenue through, the ad mobs and so many other partners. But I still feel that it is not enough in terms of monetization. Again, Vikas is the right guy to comment. I think the scale is still so much lower as compared to evolved markets like US or Europe. China is a different league altogether, but US, Europe, and all those places. Whereas real money gaming is becoming big, but there are a lot of thoughts around the fact that is real money gaming actually gaming or it's betting, correct? So, you know, there are a lot of conflicting thoughts there. But yeah, I think for us overall, huge amount of users have embraced gaming in a big way. It's mainstream media now. Advertisings are embracing it more and more. But I think for the publishers, the monetization needs to become bigger, and more people need to publish games from the local Indian ecosystem.
I think this is fantastic growth. 40% is a really big number. Congratulations to you and your team. And I think you bring to a very interesting point that that at both the sides of the gaming have opportunity. So you have a local publisher who have an opportunity to build games in a hyper casual environment for Indian consumption. I think that's what you're saying, that, you know, a lot of these consumption happening of international games. And also on the other side, the opportunity to monetize it itself is a huge, you know, and I think that's an interesting point to take away. And we will talk about the Indian scenario and the international scenario. We have a panelist who expertise in this area. But before I go to him, I think Rohit spoke about a very interesting point here about the programmatic revenue. And when he said about the programmatic revenue, I think we have a right person here who heads the largest programmatic company in this country, Zaxis. And it's my pleasure to welcome Bharat into this panel, who comes with huge experience of being a digital marketer. And they run the biggest programmatic buying company, Zaxis, under WPP agency. And his primary focus is to leverage technology which drive efficiency. And Bharat, welcome to the panel. And my opening question to you is that how do you see brands? You know, you kind of, you know, represent a lot of brands on the other side. How do you see brands leveraging gaming channels? And you know, what have you seen? What are your thoughts? And if you can elaborate few of these here, you know.
Sure.
Over to you, Bharat.
Thank you, Rahul, for the warm intro. Definitely, I think like my fellow panelists also talk about how gaming as a channel got a boost during the pandemic. I think for a company like us, being the largest programmatic desk in the biggest agency group, I think we were never able to prioritize gaming as a channel. And I will be very honest and candid on the fact, because for us and a bigger organization like this, we are primarily focusing on where is the maximum consumer eyeballs and how can we deliver the best reach, best ROI for our brands. But I think if I just take a step back, Q1, Q2 of last year is something where we also got our eyes open big wide when we saw a big decline in the regular apps on which we were doing advertising, primarily our OTT apps, audio apps, because there was no content being released during that period of the pandemic. And all of a sudden we saw, I would not say double digit, but I would say triple digit growth in terms of the time spent, in terms of new user base, in terms of even categories which we were not able to tap in the past, like housewives. We got all these segments started building in Q2, Q3 last year. And that's how we started prioritizing gaming as a channel, as part of the bouquet solution, what we offer to our clients and brands, not just in India, but across the 45 markets wherever there is WPP and Zaxis. From a brand point of view, I think the learnings what we have got over this last 1 year journey, specifically prioritizing gaming as a channel, more from an omni-channel marketing point of view, where we are still activating a similar set of brand communication on video, on display, on social, on audio, and plus now mixing gaming within that portfolio. I think there are different learnings. So some brands definitely were able to embrace this channel because they realized the potential, not just from a audience base, which Rohit mentioned, but also from the engagement factors, what gaming as a channel was able to drive compared to other categories, other channels. Second was definitely, I think in the initial phases, because everyone wants to jump this bandwagon of the new hype in gaming, we actually started just copy pasting the same creatives what we were running on other video platforms, or even a banner campaign that we are running on news platforms. But I think very drastically in the next 2-3 months, we realize that if the context and the environment is all about gaming, why the creative is still the old school video which people see on linear TV or on other video platforms. Why can't we build more interactivity? Why can't we build a gamified version of that? And I think that's where I would say, the next stage of brands which got unlocked, because now they start seeing real potential, not the old media matrix like impression, clicks, video views. And that's where the real outcomes what gaming has to offer. Now I would say the brands are entering into this third category, where they are now able to do a deeper analytics on gaming as a channel, which they were doing earlier on audio, social, and video, by understanding what matrix this channel is driving. Is it a middle funnel, or is it a lower funnel, or is it top of the funnel? Because a lot of brand have the perception on digital that this is the best medium to drive ROI, and we should get sales, conversions, leads. But to be honest, gaming as an environment, if we see how the user is engaged, even if you advertise in-game, the publisher would not want for an advertiser to drive a click and take the user out, because he's so much engaged in the game. But as an advertiser in India, people would definitely demand why my clicks are not happening, why consumers are not landing on my portal and giving me that transaction. So I think that is the phase where we're trying to educate the market and the brands, that we need to understand gaming is probably a middle funnel channel which is helping you drive an intent. And to give you a best example, we worked with the oral care brand. The first campaign we went live on gaming was a typical video that we were running on other platform, activated there. The next campaign, when we got all these analytics and insight, we worked with the creative partner to build an interactive element where within that oral care category, the creative was asking a teenage user within the 18 to 24 age group to find the germs within that creative and kill the germs, and why brushing twice a day is a part of the routine. And as an outcome, now brand would say, what can be an outcome that I should put as a KPI for you guys? Definitely, if I take a step back, people will say, drive the user to Amazon or a big basket and give me sales of that product because I'm giving offer and discounting and it's pandemic. People are not buying from retailer. But again, bringing them back that gaming as an environment is building that intent towards moving the consumer from a awareness phase towards a consideration. So maybe a right outcome can be the consumer can give a missed call on your toll free to know more about your brand. The consumer can get access to some sort of a free sample from you, because that's the category where you're operating. You're targeting 18 to 24 who is playing a game. So if you're giving him a reward that you will send a free sample to test and try out that product, whether it gives that freshness, that oral care, I think these are the outcomes what we should focus on. And that's how I think the future of gaming is looking quite exciting for us, because now brands are embracing and they're ready to walk this journey with us.
Really good to know, Bharat, that the brands are embracing, because you are on the other side of the brand custodian, and you know so many brands. Like you gave an example of a oral hygiene brand who kind of use this. But I think some of these insights which I just capture from your talk is about, you know, the entire for the right context for a user to get engaged. And if you saw, the engagement level on the gaming is very high, which is very good, you know, because every brand looking at that attention. And I think you really touched upon how beautifully it moves consumer from an awareness to a consideration side, rather than a closing a sale, you know. And I think this is just beautiful, the way the journey gaming advertising can help. No, thank you for this, and I'll come back to you. Let me just go to one of our esteemed panelists. Like I said, that you know, he's an industry leader who brings a deep knowledge and understanding about the gaming industry. It's specific to the demand generation for gaming apps. You know, it's my pleasure, and please welcome Prithviraj Majumdar, who is heading gaming and services vertical for Google in India. In his role, he helps gaming advertisers like real money game companies to drive consumer acquisition, and of course at an efficient cost. So Prithvi also brings a lot of knowledge, being in Google, about the domestic and the global perspective, and I think it'll be great to hear from him on various data point and how he sees India market and the global environment. My opening question, Prithvi, first of all, welcome to the panel once again. And I would love your views about how does paid marketing shapes the success of a game launch and sustenance. And how does this landscape going to change from now onward the next how it changed in the last few years, and how do you see next few years, particularly in this space? Prithvi, over to you.
Great. Thank you so much. Thank you for that introduction, Rahul. I'm in complete agreement with all of my fellow panelists here. I mean, it's very insightful to just hear what they're saying. So just brief introduction about what I do. I sit on the slightly different side of things over here. So I'm actually working with a bunch of gaming companies and helping them drive user acquisition, right? So essentially working with a mix of casual players, a mix of real money players, just like Rahul mentioned, and help them drive acquisition at a most efficient in a most efficient way. One way to tie it back to whatever has been mentioned till now is rightly said by all the panelists. Until these guys actually start making money, it also kind of becomes a chicken and egg situation. When should I really start investing on acquisition? If, for example, I don't have my monetization fully sorted out, right? So, but I'm probably here to talk more on the acquisition side and what we are seeing in terms of trends over there. Broadly, just like I mentioned, I do take care of a mix of real money and casual. But for this conversation, given that we're talking more about the monetization side, let's kind of concentrate on casual apps, right? And the ones that are Play Store distributed today. So, and I'll get to a few of those stats at the end, Rahul, which is in terms of how numbers are also growing. But the way we look at it and the way we talk to our partners today is apps, and especially newer apps, so newer propositions, etc. I don't think they can just rely on organic anymore. I think those days are gone, right? We live in a world of absolute clutter across the entertainment sphere, right? So be it music, be it videos, be it gaming, be it education, all of this, right? Life cycles are short for specific genres. User interest is low, etc. And hence, if you're not active enough in acquisition, you will have a competitor who will just step in and kind of steal that user who potentially could have been yours, who could have been sitting on your platform, right? The understanding we have is that every game will obviously go through this life cycle. So you probably start with what I would call is a develop cycle, which is essentially a testing phase. But that's when, and that movement is very quick. From a develop to a grow, it's really quick. And that grow phase is where, everything in terms of acquisition really comes into play. By acquisition, I think, even for example, the previous speaker, when he mentioned that it's a mix of performance and it's a mix of very top funnel campaigns, right? So both have to be looked at. And I'll also kind of break that down into the way we kind of go and talk to our gaming publishers about it. And the final phase, which is what I think everyone in this room is interested in, is the earn phase. So develop, grow, and earn, right? Earn is when finally the gaming publisher is making money, right? The first phase, when we look at grow, right, is usually it's generating very, very top funnel. It's pretty much go and drive and install. That's the simple thing, right? At the end of the day, it's a gaming app. How do I drive and install using an automated product that any of your large partners can give you? So for example, there's Google, there's Facebook, there's a bunch of them. And these campaigns could be, we work on campaigns such as TCPI, which is basically a target, cost per install. Or for example, there's also something called, maximum conversion bidding, right? So it's just to make sure you have the maximum numbers coming. But the truth is that the maturity also changes pretty fast. So you move from this, which is a very vanilla kind of install campaign, and you can keep going down the funnel. So with our more advanced advertisers today, what we're actually chasing are action campaigns. These action campaigns could probably even optimize for, a player actually making a payment within the app, or for example, reaching a certain level within the app. Or for example, I don't know, if you figure out that, after a certain level, people actually do kind of really, really get engaged into that app, we can optimize all the way to there. So it's different things that's happening across the board over there. The idea is that it all has to finally kind of tank into ROI, because unless you're looking at your final LTV and ROI for your user, it just doesn't make sense. It all falls apart, right? I think something that all the panelists also mentioned, and we keep that in our mind. We keep that in our mind even when we think of, what kind of creatives, what kind of targeting, etc. you should be looking at. It's a very young population. It's massively growing. Everyone's talked about pandemic. And for me, if you really ask me, gaming is now a gateway category to the internet. So in the past, it was video and it was communication. So we kept talking about YouTube and WhatsApp, right? Those were the two gateway areas into the internet. Today, I think gaming is one of them, for sure. It becomes a start point, right? I also mentioned branding. I think it's a critical facet of what any developer does. Over time, and this is where I come back to the clutter. I think there was AppsFlyer data which talked about a 50% increase in just game apps released on an annual basis, which means you're essential that eyeball space on the Play Store is getting that much more cluttered, right? The idea is that over time, as you drive brand recognition, what you can also do is branding will always lead to more and more efficient conversion on the performance side. Because at the end of the day, if someone knows your brand, they are more likely to go do that final full level conversion with you, right? So we kind of try and have these conversations. The idea is use television, use digital forms. Most of our advertisers really do think of digital because they are digital companies and they think of how do we kind of do measurement. And the final thing on branding is, I think we moved away from those days of saying that, yeah, TV kar liya, 20% uplift aa gaya, for example. I think now it's very, very measurement heavy. So for example, every impression that I serve needs to go and convert into something at the lower funnel. So because this person got exposed to an impression, did that person actually go in, for example, make an in-app purchase, right? And lastly, I think Rahul, where you asked, for example, how has this landscape changed over the last few years? The data that we do see is today, approximately 50% of installs, and I'm talking about a global number over here, across categories are actually paid, right? So it's no more an organic game, right? And it just shows you how cluttered this category has become. And you need the paid kind of thing to drive success. What's even happening is it's something relevant seeing is some of the highest growing categories like hyper casual, etc., are the ones that are actually heavier on the paid side. So for example, I think the hyper casual number goes up to about 60%. Right. So a couple of years ago, this landscape was different. This is obviously increasing on a year-on-year basis, and it's easily double-digit growth, right? And that's where I probably end this in saying that in India, all of these guys that we're working with today, all of our gaming partners, they cater to both Indian audiences, they cater to both global audiences, but some of these principles remain the same. So, which is why I think our conversations, obviously, there are slight nuance changes, but overall principles remain the same. Yeah.
Yeah, no, thanks, thanks, Prithvi. That's really insightful. That's really insightful. I think something very interesting about the 50% of the downloads are paid. That's amazing. That's amazing to see that. Some of the category it is like 60%, but really my light bulb moment was how this category is becoming a gateway community, or this thing. This is very, very interesting, and I think this is going to change the game as we go along. So really thank you for bringing that insight, and I'm going to come back to you in a minute, but before, I just want to go to the gaming publisher here, because I'm keen to know, being a publisher, how does your monetization model work? Does it, what's your view on, how does it differ from games to game, and how does it perform, till now? Because would you like to share your insights here?
Yeah, sure. So
Rahul, can I also ask Vikas a question, follow-up question to kind of your thing? So Vikas,
sure.
as the largest publisher today in India, would love to hear your on how is the needle moving for you in the in-app purchase? Is it moving? Do you think in-app purchase is like increasing year on year by a significant percentage? Are people doing it? Obviously, you must be building, moments or, within the game for people to do that. But would love to hear from you that in a game like yours, how is the IAP needle moving?
Yeah, sure.
Thanks, Rohit, adding this. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. So Rahul, your question, like monetization model. Monetization models are of various types, as you all know. We focus mainly on advertising and in-app purchase model, monetization model. As said earlier, as well, definitely the monetization model will differ from game to game, like the genre, the core game design, meta game involved, and various other features that provide players an addictive experience. Uh, we are we at GameShell focus on both advertising and in-app purchase monetization models. Few years ago, so Rohit, your answer is like a few years ago, 2-3 years back. I mean 2.5 years back, our revenue percentage was 10% from IAP and 90% from advertising. Now today, this number is 50-50, just because of we are using properly rewarded video in our game. We in this 2.5 years, we improved our in-game currency economy, but also added a lot of new features and game modes. Other fact is Indian audience has also shown a good safe to doing in-app purchases. We have seen from last couple of years. And being said, all of these players based in India is only increasing due to, we can say in the pandemic, we have seen many new users in the gaming ecosystem. So overall, there is going to be a constant growth in the ad monetization. Yeah.
You know, shifting the needle to 50-50 from 1090 is remarkable, because I'm sure, you know, you and your team doing some great stuff there. You know, that's, as I said, you know, you're setting up the new benchmark in the industry for gaming publishers. So keep inspiring, keep going. You know, thank you for that. But on this subject, once again, Prithvi, I think my question is related to the publisher side itself. You know, what will be the preferred monetization strategy for a game developer to build a success in India? You know, what's your that, you know? And I wanted to hear from you after what Vikas says, you know. So what do you think about that, Prithvi?
Thanks, Rahul. I actually, the moment Vikas mentioned that, I actually thought about, you know, like it actually, it's something that I'd be very close to in terms of that thought, right? That monetization is going to be so genre and geo specific. Yeah? And I'd actually go in saying, as far as saying that it's also geo. It's not just, it's obviously the genre of the game you're playing, but it's also, you know, the kind of country. So there are countries, for example, where I would assume that IP would actually work much better than, let's say, an ad model, right? And that's where I come back to it, right? That the answer would lie in the category and country of selection. For example, so just take an example. If a casual gaming company is looking to enter, let's say, Brazil, right? Having a solid in-app ads plus IAP strategy that caters especially to lower priced IAPs is essential, right? So it's clear, right? For example, they want lower priced IAPs over there. Whereas, for example, look at the US. If you want to enter the US for RPG games, more focus needs to be on IAP. And I think, like Vikas said, you know, rewarded ads is significant over there from a monetization point of view. One thing to keep in mind, though, is markets that are heavily dependent on the ads monetization part of it, or let's say genres. Over time, they also realize that IAP actually does lend to your retention rates. So low IAP in most cases can be directly proportional to low retention, right? So that's something just to keep in mind. Another good example of nuances that we think about, right, within the same country would be the India market, for example. Where look at the cards category today. The cards category today, it relies on IAP plus rewarded, whereas the casual category is monetized very significantly via in-app ads. The advice I think, and this comes across Google, this comes from probably everyone who's going to speak on the subject, is, you know, to the game developers to actually keep an eye on the category and the country and see what is that ideal mix. To kind of find out what is that right approach for monetization. I think to summarize, just understand the user, understand the geo context, and then measure, right? Keep measuring and keep kind of figuring out and fine tuning.
I want to add here. Yeah, hello.
We can hear you, Vikas.
Yeah. So regarding regarding in-app purchase and rewarded video, these both things, how can we balance these things in our game is very important. Our users, especially in Ludo King, as you all know, this is the biggest game from India, and our 73, more than 73, almost 75% users are from India. And we have seen our 50% revenue in-app plus advertising is from India and 50% from outside. As said by Prithvi, IAP, regarding IAP, see, what we have seen is less than 3% or less than that in India are IAP users.
Yeah.
If we loses 1% due to cannibalization of due to RV, like rewarded video with IAP, we are in profit like 3 to 4 times. If we remove advertisement from our game, in India we can't monetize properly. So if we are using advertisement in our game, so with rewarded video, we are in profit. If we lose 1% IAP users, so this is the fact in India.
Thank
Rahul, you are already.
Is it
breaking up?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Bad.
All the happening.
Sorry.
In gaming.
Sorry, Rahul, you are not audible properly.
Okay. Let me. Is it?
No, maybe your Goa internet is not working out.
Let me try.
Actually, while Rahul reconnects, because we can't hear him.
Yeah.
Because I actually had a question for you, and sorry.
Yeah, Prithvi, go ahead.
Because I had a question for you, which is really on the, because this is something we had read of an AppsFly report also, and logically it seems to make sense, right? Which is the more the in-app purchase, the more you're going to keep someone engaged, right? Because they're, for example, paying, I'm making it up for a level, for a sword, etc. What's our thought on that? So I understand, and it's very clear, right? In India, it's a massive, the ads opportunity is huge, rewarded video is huge, but yes, it's also a user discomfort towards IAP, and that's something that will take time to build. But what does it mean from a game engagement point of view?
Prithvi, I'm saying just opposite. What we experienced is like, just for example, out of 100 users, 95% are not payers. Okay. Now they are using seeing advertisements, rewarded video, and getting the in-game currencies. Now the about 5% users, they are purchasers. Agree. Out of 2% in that IAP users, now they are converting to our rewarded video. Right. Now about the 3% users who don't want to wait, they can purchase immediately and they can use the features. But what we have seen is, rewarded video users are more engaged in our game.
Okay.
More engaged, because suppose if I'm an IAP user, I bought some coins in a purchase, and I use those coins in the next 2 days. Okay. in the next 3 days, after if I open the game, I'm saying I don't have coins. So at least in India,
Got it.
if they buy or not buy, I'm not confident. But if I'm serving rewarded video, the retention increases.
Fair enough.
3 to 4 times we have seen the engagement rate and retention rate.
Yeah. Also, I think Vikas, for you, the advantage is the slot in which you run the ad. So primarily from a Ludo King point of view, I think it's not getting user being bugged during the game. It's actually when the game ends, then the advertising slot runs.
Yeah,
I think that's a gold mine from you. But if you see the gaming categories like what Prithvi is saying, more from a casual games like Candy Crush, Subway Surfers and all, in this category, I believe that definitely from an Indian mindset, people are feeling that they are being bugged by intrusive advertising, not relevant for them, because most of the brands, like you said, are international brands which are running non-branded videos, non-branded lower funnel content. And the way the mindset has changed and the purchasing power has come, the digital wallets have actually grown enough in terms of giving that opportunity. Yes, that on a swipe, I can just do that IP purchase and then just freely play the game environment. I think it's a good, interesting fact that how a game like you is into a completely different genre and again growing at that massive pace, being, I would say, the most organic game, I would say. And then from a other casual gaming point of view, how people are first thinking what should be the architect gaming, and then they're force fitting the ad slots. So I think that would be, I would say, my take on these two, how you will see in-game purchases versus the advertising monetization motion.
Yeah.
And Bharat, you know, to add to that, there is also a very interesting, India is also very differentiated in one phenomenon. If you look at any other market than India, in any gaming ecosystem, 90% of advertisers are game advertisers within games.
Yeah.
Right? If you look at most of the markets,
yep.
Now, and obviously it is relevant because as I mentioned earlier, these gaming companies who are advertisers are spending because they want to spend on an inorganic user or a paid user.
Yeah.
But in India, the large chunk of advertising which is happening on gaming acquisition, actually they don't care because they are just running really ads. So therefore, I think for companies like Zaxxay's or for companies like ours, when we go to brands and bring relevancy of advertising, as you said, in Candy Crush, target housewives, in Need for Speed, and all target in Need for Speed, target certain kind of audiences. So I think that is where brand advertising brings more saliency and more relevancy.
Yeah. I also wanted to check with Vikas on that, like from a monetization, when you talk about the ad monetization, since you might be monetizing through a lot of programmatic pipes like Google, Pubmatic, Pocket and all. So what percentage is actually the brand advertising? When I say brand advertising, all your blue chip companies within FMCG, auto and all, and what percentage is actually something what Rohit mentioned about the other gamers trying to acquire your user and taking away that share of time spent or the user interface.
Sorry, question to me?
I wanted to understand more from your point of view, what insights you can bring on the table. Like if you are monetizing 100 million impressions, what percentage is actually being used by the brands, the blue chip companies like FMCG, auto, and what percentage are being used by other gaming applications who are trying to, I would say, acquire your user onto their platform?
So, Bharat, frankly speaking, we are using only what we call a trusted ad network like AdMob, Facebook, Unity, and those networks don't give us such details, the percentage of this thing.
Got it. Understood.
Okay. Now, I'm back, gentlemen, and I'm back to wrap this this session. Thank you for backing me up when I was not around. But thank you so much. I think I would have kind of got more, but I think this session It was wonderful. And advertising are great to time. Thank you for sharing insights about this industry, domestic and global. Really appreciate your time. Yeah, really appreciate your time, and thanks once again for coming in. Great weekend. So all the best. Thank you once again.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Thanks,
Thanks,
Rahul.
Thanks, bye.
Thank you, everyone. My sincere thanks to all the panelists who could join us today and for sharing your valuable insights with us. Thank you again. With this, we come to the end of the panel discussion and, of course, the end of week 1 of 3rd edition of India Gaming Show and Conference 2021, being organized by CII in association with the Indian Digital Gaming Society. I once again would like to thank our partners, Google, Western Digital, Jet Synthesis, Scientific Games, Hangama Games, Nodwin Gaming, Asus, Critical X Exports, Game.tv, and our content partner KPMG for extending their support to us. My sincere thanks to all the dignitaries and participants who could join us today. I would really urge participants to kindly visit the virtual exhibition, which is live anytime today or in the next 10 days. We'll start our week 2 of the conference on Monday, which is 8th of March at 3 p.m. with some very interesting sessions and many eminent speakers joining us. So have a wonderful weekend, one and all. Stay safe. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thanks.
everyone.